Hi there, my name's Tracy Bradley and I'm one of the group of instructors that work at Bradley Physio. This introductory session is to give you a taster of what Pilates is all about. Hopefully by the end of the session you have a good understanding what we mean when we talk about centering, how to get into a good postural alignment, so that you can take these skills away and use them not only in a Pilates class but also in everyday life. The Pilates works on lots of different things: postural alignment, flexibility, breathing control, engaging the core and centering, and relaxation. First thing we do before we do any Pilates manoeuvre is make sure our posture is as perfect as we possibly can get it. Now, we're not trying to make you lie, sit or stand like a ballerina or a gymnast. We're just trying to make things as good as we possibly can. So I never want you to feel like you're pushing yourself into a position that your body hasn't been in for many, many years, but just gently trying to remind yourself how joints should sit and lie when you're in certain positions. When we look at postural alignment, we generally start with head and neck position. One thing you will find useful in Pilates is some sort of head cushion. Now, you can simply just use a hand towel folded into layers, and you can increase the number of layers depending on what position you need, and I'll go through that shortly. Or if you have a small cushion to hand, even better. I'm just going to talk quickly through the positioning when you lie down on the floor. You're going to imagine you're lying on rail tracks. You want a shoulder blade, a hip and a foot on each track. So these feet are hip width apart and your knees stay pointing to the ceiling over each track. You'll probably find as you go through the session those knees all want to drift apart, particularly if you're weak and tight through the outer thighs, or they might want to cling together if you're tight in the inner thighs. But we're going to make them work a little bit by just holding them there, pointing to the ceiling. When you're lying on your back, your chin should be gently tucking in, and you imagine you're lengthening through the back of your neck. So you can imagine a string attached to the top of your head, gently drawing your head to the wall behind you. Now, a lot of you, when you lie down in this position, will find your chin really wants to poke up to the ceiling and your head comes forwards. And you'll end up with a shortened neck. Think of the base of the skull being quite close there to the shoulders. So if you gently nod your chin, tuck it in and imagine lengthening through the back of your neck there. And then let your head just fall into the pillow. Now, if you find that you can't do that with the depth of pillow that you've got, then it means you need to increase it. So if you're using your fold up towel, just increase the layers of towel that you've got there so you can get as close to this nice neck alignment as you possibly can. The next thing we look at are the shoulders and the shoulder girdle. Now, most of us in our everyday lives work a lot through our arms. The shoulder blades start to creep up to our ears and they come forwards. Most of the things we do in everyday life are in front of us, using a keyboard, driving a car. So your brain starts to think that this is a normal position. The structures at the front of your shoulder will become very tight and the muscles that hold the shoulder blades in the position at the back get very weak. To make sure you've got as good an alignment as you possibly can, think about sliding your shoulder blades up to your ears and then reaching your fingertips towards your heels, taking the tip of your shoulder as far away from your earlobe as you can. Do that 2 or 3 times and imagine those shoulder blades sliding down to your back pockets there. And one more, and reach for your heels and then just let your shoulder blades fall back into the floor behind you. So you feel like you're opening out through these collarbones at the front, lengthening. Don't worry if you can't get into that position entirely, but just try and get as close to it as you can. Without even thinking about it, you're starting to gently stretch these structures at the front of your shoulder that tend to get very tight. Now, the next thing we look at is your rib cage position. Probably the most difficult thing to correct, and don't panic if it takes you many, many weeks to really understand what we mean when we start talking about relaxing through your rib cage, letting go through your lower ribs. But most people will lie or sit or stand with the lower ribs pushing up towards the ceiling and the lower rib cage away from the mat. So there's air between the lower rib cage and the mat behind you. So if you imagine you're almost lying there on your shoulder blades, almost arching away from the floor, and then lying on your pelvis as well. And you're not allowing your spine to take up the support of the floor and the mat behind you. This is because, again, when we're sitting and we try and sit up straight, we tend to throw the chest forwards, and your brain starts thinking, this is how we sit up straight. Well, it isn't. We're going to show you later how to sit up straight. But then we hold a lot of tension then in this middle back area. Stiffness in the middle back area means that your neck and your lower back are going to have to work extra hard, leading to an awful lot of problems in the neck and lower back eventually. So you'll find if you have been in for physiotherapy treatment on either your neck or your lower back, will very often end up having to do a little bit of work around what we call the thoracic spine at the back of the chest to loosen you off there, to alleviate any pressure above and below. So how to relax through the rib cage? The easiest way is to imagine a big wide elastic belt just gently wrapping around your lower chest. Gently take a breath in, stretching the ribs into that band. And as you breathe out, imagine the elastic band just gently helping those lower ribs soften down into your tummy. Your tummy should go really soft now, like marshmallow. And again, just gently breathe in. And as you breathe out, think about that lower chest falling into the mat behind you. One more. And again, let go. So now these lower ribs really soft into the floor, your tummy nice and soft as well. Next thing we look at is the pelvis. You imagine your pelvis is like a bowl of water. We're going to get as good alignment as we possibly can through the pelvis. So you gently tip that bowl of water backwards and forwards. And again, just keep your feet flat on the floor, knees pointing to the ceiling, and tip that bowl of water backwards and forwards. So your lower back flattens into the mat, and now it arches away from the mat. And have a really good feel of how much movement you've got there. Now you want to find a balanced position where you wouldn't be tipping water one way or another. You have a gentle inward curve in the lower back. I'd be able to get a little grape in there between the spine and the mat. You wouldn't be squashing it, you'd be gently resting on it. Now, without changing the position of your pelvis and lower back, just have a check what the rib cage is doing. Very often at this point it's sprung back up and arching away from the floor again. So just gently let go through those lower ribs and let go through your tummy. So now we've got the spine in as good an alignment as we possibly can. We've got that length through the neck. The back of the chest is arching gently into the floor. The lower back is gently arching away from the floor. We've got those knees pointing to the ceiling and feet hip width apart at the bottom. The reason we want you in as good a position as possible, well, there's two reasons. The first reason is that we're just trying to remind your brain where good posture is, where these joints are evenly balanced. They're not being stressed and strained in any particular direction. They're just nice and rested in their mid position. But also when we come to trying to engage the core, you're giving the core the best possible chance of actually springing into action and working. If you're sitting slouched, the core can't work very well. And there's people that tends to sort of lean backwards a lot. Again, the core can't work very well. It will work best when your spine is in a really nice alignment. Now we're going to talk about centering. So centering is the term that we use in Pilates for engaging your core. Gently getting those deep tummy muscles working to stabilise the spine. Now the core muscles are very different to the big muscle groups like your six pack, your rectus abdominis, your quadricep muscles, for instance, your biceps. These muscles are designed to work really hard for short periods of time, but then they need a really good rest. So for instance, you can't squat forever. You can only do it for maybe a minute if you're really lucky, and then you need to have a really good rest. Your core muscles are much more like your diaphragm and your heart. They're designed to work very gently in the background without you really having to think too much about it, but they need to be working all day long to do their job. The other issue with muscles like quadriceps, the rectus abdominis, your six pack, your biceps, if you work them hard, they become very tight. You become very rigid, really stiff. Your body, your joints depend on flexibility to remain healthy and pain-free. So the core muscles are there to stabilise the pelvis and the lower back, but allow you still to move freely, but in a very controlled manner. And that's why Joseph Pilates himself didn't call what he did Pilates. He actually called it controlology. And Pilates is all about controlling movement. And once you understand that and get to grips with that, you'll find you use the principles in Pilates in everything that you do, whether it's sitting at your desk, driving your car, loading and unloading the dishwasher. You'll be thinking about how to do it in as controlled a fashion as possible, making use of your core muscles, but also taking the strain off of any other joints in the process as well. So how do we engage the core? There's lots of different ways, and I'll talk you through some of them to think about engaging the core. And you really need to find the picture in your mind that works best for you. So the first one we'll talk about is imagining that you've got a zip starting very low down at your pubic bone that draws all the way up to your belly button. Before you start, you're going to make sure you've got that neutral spine position. So we're going to tip our bowl of water backwards and forwards. Find the neutral position. Let the lower chest go, so let go. Shoulder blades nice and soft into the floor. That length through the neck, knees pointing to the ceiling. Now that zip is open at the moment. Everything's really relaxed. Your tummy should feel like marshmallow. I want you to think about your lower tummy and your top tummy. So you're going to put one hand on your lower tummy, below your belly button, just gently rest it on there, and the other hand just gently resting on your top tummy. Now your core muscles are predominantly lie below your belly button. So this is where we want to feel the work going on. We don't want to feel too much going on underneath this top hand. Now think of that zip. It's open to start with. Everything's nice and relaxed, gently resting on our little grape at the back. We're not going to change the pressure on that grape, but when we think about just gently drawing the bottom few teeth of that zip together from your pubic bone, and draw as many of those teeth together as you can without feeling any tightening up underneath this top hand. And you might feel, if you're lucky, that lower tummy just gently moving away from your hand. You might feel a little drawing in that saddle area between your legs as well. And you're going to try and hold that for up to 10 breaths and then let go. Let that zip open and everything relax. Another nice place to feel, if you're not sure whether you're doing very much, is to pop your fingers just above your groins. Just let them rest on there, don't dig in. Think about that zip starting very low down on your pubic bone. Just gently draw the bottom edges of that zip together. You might feel like your belly button is drawing down to the tip of your tailbone, just gently drawing in. Again, everything underneath the rib cage at the top here should stay nice and relaxed. And let go. And we're going to do that one more time. So think of that zip, gently draw in. You shouldn't feel any tension in your bottom. They should stay nice and relaxed. These knees stay pointing to the ceiling. And just focus on your breathing, just gently breathing. And see if you can hold that for up to 10 breaths. If you can only manage 1 or 2 breaths, don't worry about it. If that method of visualization doesn't work for you, another thing you can think about is imagine you've got a belt on your trousers. Now start with that belt, just loosely done up, just tight enough to kind of gently rest around your waist there. Now you're going to gently draw the lower tummy away from that belt, so you can just tighten that belt by about a notch or so, not too much. Remember, we don't want this tension in the upper tummy. And you hold for up to 10 breaths. Now you'll find at this stage you're starting to feel quite relaxed. That's because you're really having to focus on what you're doing. You'll find this really difficult to do if there's a lot going on. You've got a lot of visual disturbance around or a lot of noise. You'll need to be able to concentrate. And while you're gently activating that core, I want you to really think about how it feels from the inside so that you can replicate this eventually in any position. To start with, we always teach this lying down because it's by far the easiest position to really focus and concentrate on what you're doing. But you'll find in time we'll start bringing in sitting and standing, and you'll be able to do this in any position and quite quickly as well. And let go. You've got 3 muscles that make up the core. you've got a muscle that we call the transverse abdominis. The transverse abdominis starts round at the spine, it wraps around your waist and attaches back onto itself just below your belly button in a long strip there. It's a bit like a corset in that if you can get it toned up and get it working a little bit harder for a little bit longer through the day, like a corset, clamping the two halves of the pelvis together and giving your spine a really nice solid base to stand itself up on. Don't forget, the pelvis also houses the sockets for your hip joints as well. So if the pelvis is steady, your hip sockets are going to be more stable, making you use your legs or allowing you to use your legs more efficiently. Second muscle that you've got in the core are the pelvic floor muscles that sit in the saddle area between your legs. Again, if we can get those toned up and working a little bit harder for a little bit longer, they'll also help clamp the two halves of the pelvis together, make it a more stable base for your legs and your spine to work on. And don't forget, if your spine is more stable, then your shoulder blades are more stable on the back of your chest. If your shoulder blades are more stable, it means you're going to use your arms a lot more efficiently as well. And then the third muscle that make up the core are these little muscles that are like little pieces of elastic that bridge the bones of the spine in the lower back. And they act like, I like to imagine they act like little guiders, just making the movement of the spine more purposeful. Your spine doesn't wibble and wobble around an awful lot, but just making it more purposeful, just really protecting those joints. The good news is that you only need to think about one of those muscle groups and the other two muscles will work as well. So you've got this three-dimensional stability as you engage through the core. So that's centering. We'll come back to centering in sitting and in standing, because although it's great to be able to do it in lying, it's probably the least useful position on a daily basis. It's not where you need your core to be protecting you. You need your core protecting you when you're up and about and moving. So we'll look at that before we finish today's session. Before we do that, I just want to go through a few basic Pilates movements, just so you're a little bit more familiar with them and some of the positions as well. So we'll start with an exercise called scissors, and we'll start with scissors level 1. Now don't forget, you're lying on your rail tracks, you've got your shoulder, hip and foot on each side on those tracks, and those knees are going to stay pointing to the ceiling over these tracks. Remember, it's all about controlling movement. So if you imagine you've got little headlights on these knobbly hip bones at the front here, you can even pop your fingers onto them, and imagine those headlights are shining at the ceiling. Now you're going to let go, gently set through the centre, so think about your zip or that belt to get that lower tummy just gently working, and it only needs to work gently to do its job, remember. Now we're going to keep those headlights nice and steady as we float the left leg up into what we call tabletop. So tabletop is the hip and the knees square, the toes pointing forwards, and then float that leg down, back onto its track, and now the right leg. Hold and lower. Now in a class we'll be talking about breathing control. Don't panic if breathing control really confuses you and throws you. Just ignore it and just breathe however you feel comfortable with. But as you get more familiar with Pilates, you will find you can bring it in. It really helps with the relaxation element of Pilates, but also helps the diaphragm work in conjunction with the core. So you're just working a little bit more efficiently. But it's by no means the be all and end all of Pilates. And there's nothing worse for me than seeing somebody get really het up because they can't breathe in when I ask them to breathe in, or breathe out when they ask them to breathe out, and ruin the whole Pilates experience for themselves. So for this exercise, if you want to have a little go at the breathing control, let go, gently breathe in. As you breathe out, you're going to draw in through that zip to set through the centre. Gently breathe in. As you breathe out, you're going to float the left leg to tabletop. Hold and breathe in. Breathe out to float that left foot back down onto its track. Breathe in to prepare. Right leg to tabletop. Hold and breathe in. Breathe out to lower. Breathe in to prepare. Breathe out to float the left leg. Hold and breathe in. Breathe out to lower. Keep going. So think about these headlights on these hip bones. Try not to let them wobble. And again. Keep nice and soft through the lower chest. Shoulders nice and relaxed. Chin gently drawing in. Do one more on each side. So this is scissors level 1. Now if we're going to take this up into a level 2 exercise, we need to go up into what we call double tabletop. If you found that exercise very challenging, then I don't want you to worry about double tabletop just for now. But just so you're prepared, if we come to a double tabletop exercise in a class and you want to join in, you need to be able to get into the position safely. So gently draw in, lower tummy set. As you breathe out, float the left leg to tabletop. Now with that left leg in tabletop, hold and breathe in. Now as you breathe out, gently draw that lower tummy in just a little bit harder. And now we're going to breathe out to float the right leg to tabletop. Hold and breathe in, breathe out to lower the left foot. Hold and breathe in, breathe out to lower the right foot. So we'll do that one more time. We'll start with the right leg this time. So let go, draw in, set through the centre. As you breathe out, float the right leg up. Hold and breathe in, breathe out to float the left leg. Hold that position this time and think about your breathing, gently breathing into the lower chest. And from this position, we'll do various different exercises in a slightly more advanced Pilates class. That lower tummy is drawing in nice and flat, back like the top of a drum. But don't worry if this position is uncomfortable or too strenuous for you. We'll always demonstrate a lower level exercise that you'll be able to join in with. Breathe out to float one foot to the floor. Hold and breathe in. Breathe out to float the other foot to the floor. Just watch when you lower your legs that you just lower one leg at a time, never both feet together. So we're controlling the movement, making it really safe the whole time, keeping that pelvis and lower back in as good and as perfect a position as we possibly can. Another exercise we do from this position is shoulder bridge. Now I'm going to pop a slightly deflated soft ball between the knees, just to control the knees. At home you can just use a cushion or a rolled up towel or something gently between the knees. As you're more confident, you'll find you can do it without anything between your knees at all. It's just so you don't have to worry about those knees wobbling around as you work this exercise. Your arms relaxed down by your side, chin tucking in, shoulder blades relaxing into the floor. Gently tip the pelvis forwards and backwards. Let go through the lower chest and gently draw in through the lower tummy to set that centre before we start. Now, I'm just going to ask Kira now to just demonstrate a shoulder bridge exercise for you. So the aim of the exercise is to get these hips up. You've got to really squeeze through your sitting bones. We're going to get those hip bones as high as we can, preferably higher than your knees, and then gently fold down. Okay. So it's very easy to cheat at this exercise. So to make sure you get the most out of this exercise, you're going to imagine your spine is like a string of beads from the base of your neck to the very tip of your tailbone. Keeping that lower tummy gently working to control the movement. You're going to squeeze through your bottom, squeeze those sitting bones together to scoop the pelvis, and then peel those beads up off the floor one by one, gently pushing your knees forwards over your toes, and your weight should feel like it's going slightly forwards over your feet. Hold and breathe in. Now keep those sitting bones tight. As you breathe out, fold the spine down, bone by bone, from the shoulders down, all the way down, bone by bone, one by one. And that way you get a really nice stretch through the spine as well. So this exercise is a great strengthening exercise. You're working through your core, you're working through your glutes and your hips there, but also really working on that flexibility by getting those bones to move up and down one by one. Breathe in to prepare, breathe out to squeeze through your bottom, scoop up, hold and breathe in. As you breathe out, fold down. Now watch around this area, you'll find you'll want to go down like a plank of wood, so really work about getting those bones down individually, one by one. And if you can feel the back of your thighs tightening up, you probably need to get your sitting bones as tight as you can. Really clench those bottom muscles together. And again, so really squeeze and scoop up. Now a typical time to get cramp is just before you lower, because you relax your bottom. So you've got to keep this tight as you fold down. And if you can't get up quite as high as Kira, don't worry, you will do eventually. And always stay at the lower level of this exercise. You'll find in classes we'll give you slightly different variations, like a few different things to make it harder, but please don't work any harder until you can really get this basic peel up and fold down and right up into that full bridge position, all the way up there, and fold down. Okay, trying to minimize any rotation through your hips. So you're wanting that pelvis to glide up nice and stably rather than wobble from side to side. Well done. Okay, I'm going into side lying now. So if you turn onto your side, in side lying for most exercises, the underneath arm will be reaching away. You want your pillow in between your ear and shoulder. Hips and knees are bent. With your heels in line with your hips, your sitting bones, your hand gently resting on the floor in front of your belly button, this top shoulder blade nice and relaxed. You still want your chin tucking in and your head in a nice alignment there. Going to think about your pelvis again, your centering position. So we've got that nice length there from the tip of your shoulder to your earlobe. You're going to tip your pelvis forwards and backwards, tucking your tailbone under, sticking it out, tipping your bowl of water forwards and backwards, and then find your middle position. And then just get this top hip bone. Imagine you've got a headlight on it and just roll it ever so slightly forward so it's shining a light onto the floor about 1 metre in front of you. So we do a lot of exercises in side lying as well. Just show you one, the clam level 1 exercise. So for clam level 1, you're really working your glutes as well as your core control. You're going to keep your feet together and float the top knee to the ceiling without turning that hip bone and down. So you're going to keep this headlight pointing forwards and down. That lower tummy is gently working. And then squeeze that knee up and then lower. So keep that top hip rolling forwards and down. Breathe out to float up. Into lower. So you're just watching that you don't turn the pelvis. So if I just do a bad one, you don't want the pelvis to turn as well. That's not good. We're going to keep that top hip pointing forwards and down, that pelvis bent, lower tummy set. Going to keep nice and relaxed through this supporting hand. Just a gentle pressure through your fingertips, nice and soft through your shoulder. And you should feel this working the back and side of your bottom. If you feel it working through the front of your hip, you're probably rolling back a little bit more. So don't be frightened. Just heading forwards a little bit more and rolling forwards. Okay, one more. Breathing out to open, into close. Well done. Another position that we're working is lying on your tummy. So if you turn over onto your tummy. So you'll want a slightly thicker pillow for when you lie on your tummy. And that pillow is going to go underneath your forehead. Eyes looking straight through the floor there. So you've still got that length through the back of your neck and you're still tucking the chin in. Shoulder blades gently heading down the back of your chest towards your back pockets, then just let them go. Arms relaxed down by your side. Feet, hips and shoulders still all lined up as if you're lying on those rail tracks. We're going to think about our centre position again. So think about your bowl of water. Not quite so easy for most of us in this position. So gently tip that bowl of water backwards, tuck your tailbone under and forwards. So you think of those knobbly hip bones, they come away from the floor as you tuck under, and they come towards the floor as you tip forwards. Then you're going to find your balanced position. Okay. Gently draw in through your lower tummy to set through the centre. And I like to imagine I've got a big marshmallow underneath each hip bone in this position, and I'm gently resting on those marshmallows but not squashing them. An exercise you can do in this position to challenge your core, work through your bottom and stretch the front of your hips is swimming level 1. So swimming level 1, we float the leg away from the floor and lower without changing the pressure on those marshmallows. Left leg, float and lower. And right leg, and as you float the leg, I want you to think about stretching. Try and touch the wall behind you to really engage that glute, that bottom muscle on that side. And then the left leg. Breathe out to float, into lower. And again, breathing out, lengthen the leg, stretch away, into lower. Keep a check on those marshmallows. You can also imagine you've got a little marble balanced in the small of your back. You don't want it to roll around. Lengthen. And you can see there you're working your bottom stretching through the front of your hip there and down. Really controlling the movement. So we're not using the back to lift the leg, we're not putting any extra strain through those back joints, we're not using the shoulders to try and help, we're really working those muscles that are designed to do the job efficiently and effectively. One more on each side. Well done. Okay, we'll come up onto our hands and knees. There's an awful lot to think about on your hands and knees in Pilates. Okay, so you want a hand underneath each shoulder, knee underneath each hip, and just the elbows soft, so not bent, but don't force them into a locked position. You want your feet and knees hip width apart, and toes lined up with those knees. Tuck your chin in again to get that length through the back of your neck. Now most of you would generally, just tip your shoulders for me, tip your head. We let your head drop and end up in this position. Imagine a big candle there on the mat underneath your nose. That flame's going to catch your nose as you look through the floor, lift your nose away to lengthen through the back of your neck. But you're also really then working these deep neck muscles that are there to hold your head up on your shoulders. Muscles we really, or most of us, are really pretty rubbish at using. Shoulder blades to back pockets, and then just gently push the floor away to lengthen the arms. Okay, think about your center position again. So we're going to tip the pelvis forwards and backwards, finding your balanced position, and when you've got that balanced position, gently draw in through the lower tummy. Remember, it's this center that's going to really control any movements that you make through your body. So holding this position now, you're going to reach forwards with your right arm and back. And now your left arm. Staying strong on the right shoulder as you reach forwards with the left, and vice versa. Nice and tall. Keeping that alignment through the head, neck and shoulders. You can imagine you've got a little marble again in the small of your back. Your feet stay nice and relaxed on the floor. Coming back to the start position. Then you can start to work in a similar fashion through the legs. So just checking your position, lower tummy set, sliding the toes of your left foot backwards, and then floating the knee and return. Right leg, breathe out to stretch. Check on your position through your head, neck and shoulders. Into return. And again, breathe out to stretch, into return. And again, let that little marble in the small of your back roll around. One more on each side. Try and float the heel in line with your shoulder. And again. And return. Well done. Look at the position here, we've lost that control through the head, neck and shoulders, so really work hard to keep it. It's not easy, especially when you've been in this position for a while. Okay, so I mentioned earlier in the class that we'd look at centering in sitting and in standing as well. Sitting is probably the most important place to make sure you get your posture as good as you possibly can, because once you sat down, you tend to spend quite a lot of time there, and those joints are being statically loaded. You've got gravity compressing you from the top, the seat compressing you from underneath. So if you're not in a good position, you can really put an awful lot of unnecessary strain on the joints throughout the spine. So all the same principles. When you're sitting in a chair, you want to make sure your feet are lined up with your hips and shoulders, knees pointing forwards. Again, just watch, especially a lot of you gentlemen, you'll find your knees want to drop out because you're very tight through your outer thighs. So it might be worth, for a few days, sitting with a ball or something just between your knees, just to remind you where those knees should be and get that feeling like a more normal position to be sitting in. You'll also, without even thinking about it, be giving these structures down the outer thigh a bit of a stretch, which they'll need. You want that length through the back of the neck. So remember, we tend to sit with the head pushing forward, slouching, shoulders coming up. So you can imagine a string pulling you up to the top of your head, that chin gently tucking in to get that nice length there through the back of the neck. Shoulder blades gently falling away from your shoulders, down to your back pockets, and just think about opening out a little bit through those collarbones, just lengthening through the front of your chest there. As you breathe out, let the lower chest, those lower ribs, just soften down into your tummy, and don't be frightened to let that tummy go really soft and squishy or marshmallowy underneath there. And then think about your position. So you're going to think about that centering. Think about your pelvis here. So you're going to tip it forwards as far as you can and backwards. So thinking about that bowl of water, tipping the bowl forwards and backwards. And this is how you make sure you're sitting in a good position in a chair. It's not about throwing your shoulders back and pushing your chest forwards, as many of us do. It should all come from the pelvis. And now find your middle position where you wouldn't be tipping that bowl one way or another. Got a gentle inward curve in your lower back, gentle outward curve in the upper of the back, and the head sitting nicely on top of the shoulders there. Thinking about centering in this position, getting those core muscles gently working. Again, you can pop one hand onto your lower tummy below your belly button, the other on the top tummy above your belly button. Gently draw in through your lower tummy. You can think about that zip, gently drawing up from the pubic bone, gently towards your belly button. Remember, we don't want to work so hard that the muscles underneath this top hand are becoming really tense and tight. We want to keep those nice and relaxed. Gently drawing in and then let go when you're ready. Remember, we're aiming to hold for about 10 breaths, but you might find to start with just 1 or 2 breaths is plenty. Breathe in to prepare. Breathe out to gently draw in. Keep breathing, think about that lower chest. And when you're ready, as you breathe out, let go through the lower tummy. And in this position, you might even feel the pelvic floor starting to gently just lift away from the seat as they engage too. And you just feel like that lower tummy is really flattening, widening, tightening like the top of a drum. That's your core muscles engaging. That's exactly what centering is. So what I would recommend that you do is every time you sit down, when you've got time, just have a bit of a wiggle in the middle, find your balanced position, let go through your chest, and then gently draw in through your lower tummy. Don't forget about it. But the more often you do that, the more your brain will feel how it feels to activate those core muscles. And eventually, and it won't take long, you'll go to do it and you'll think, oh, they're actually working already. Let me see if I can just work them a little bit harder. So you're starting to get that increase in tone, that 24-hour control through the core all day long. Well done. Again, in standing, centering up, this is probably the most difficult position to work in. You've got an awful lot to think about and an awful lot that can go wrong. So don't worry if you find this too hard. If you've got a pair of trousers on, pop your fingers just gently into the pockets until just those hands can gently rest against your lower tummy. You can just bring your hands up there, okay? So we're going to get that nice length through the back of the neck, shoulder blades softening to your back pockets. Let go through your lower rib cage, and think about the bowl of water in the middle. So keep your knees soft, stick your tailbone out, and tuck your tailbone under. And again. People will often find this really difficult to do. Look at the shoulders, they stay over the heels. We're not rocking forwards and backwards as we do this. We're staying really controlled, and it's just this middle section here that's working. And if you stood still and you find you get backache a lot, this is a really nice way of just alleviating the pressure in the lower back. So have a good feel of how much movement you've got there. Then find your middle position. So we've got that centre position, giving these core muscles the best chance we can of working. Remember to let go through the lower chest. And as you breathe out, just gently drawing in through the lower tummy. Think about your belt around your waist, your zip drawing up from your pubic bone, whichever works for you. And again, just trying to hold up to 10 breaths. Remembering these are muscles that are designed to work all day, every day, not just for short periods. They don't have to work harder, yeah. And when you're ready, let go. And again, gently draw in. Hold for up to 10 breaths. And let go. Bring in some of the breathing control. Breathe in to prepare. As you breathe out, gently draw in through the core. Keep breathing gently out and then in again. Up to 10 breaths. And as you breathe out again, let go through the lower tummy. And again. Breathe in to prepare. Breathe out to draw in. Keep gently breathing. Really thinking, focusing on how that feels through your lower tummy, through your pelvic floor. Remember, you're getting that three-dimensional control. And as you breathe out when you're ready, letting go through the centre. Well done. Okay. So I hope you found that introductory session useful and now an understanding of what Pilates is all about, what we mean when we talk about centering, getting that good postural alignment, have an understanding of some of the positions that we'll use in Pilates, and understand how you can use it in your everyday life as well. What I'd recommend you do now is go away and just practice the positioning, maybe once a day in lying if you can, but then in sitting and in standing too throughout the day. And you really need to try and do just a little something every hour or two, so maybe just 2 or 3 of the positioning and the gentle drawing in through your lower tummy 2 or 3 times every hour over the next few days to really get your brain and your core muscles engaged and understanding what they're there for, so that when you come to the classes you can really get the most out of each and every exercise without having to think too hard about keeping that core muscle engaged throughout. Well done, and we look forward to seeing you in the classes.